Welcome back to the shop, my friends. Steve here at SKS Props, and coming up pretty quick, I'm going to be going out to a steampunk convention put on by a couple of friends of mine. And while a lot of the people out there know me for my foam smithing abilities, I realized that I don't actually have a steampunk project on my website. So I figured this would be a great opportunity to revisit the Plague Doctor mask, which is by far one of the most popular builds on my entire channel. Now, the first one I did was very simple. It's just a couple of pieces to show how flat sheets of foam become a three-dimensional object. In version 2.0, I upped the details on this one, so if you have grown over the years with your foam smithing abilities, I have a new project that you can tackle. Now, the thing I love about this is the fact that you can easily customize this to make it any way you like. I, of course, gave it the leather and brass look to look more steampunk, but I expect to see a whole bunch of really cool designs out there, and I want you to tag me if you are building this. Now, of course, if you would like to make your own, I have free PDF files available over on my website that you can download to build right along with me. Just like all the rest of my builds, this is made completely out of my HD foam, which you can find over at Blick Art Materials. And if you love these videos, you love the free templates, by all means, go through the links that are in the description section and those that are on my website and pick up some amazing HD foam. Every time you do, it supports me, the channel, which means I can continue to make awesome things like this and give you free PDF files. So I want to show you what it takes to put the Plague Doctor mask version 2.0 together. Let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start this build by taking part A and tracing and cutting this out of some 6mm foam. Do note that the cut at the top of the beak is going to be at a 30-degree angle. This will allow the beak to curve and conform better. Weldwood contact cement is going to be used to glue the two halves together. After the adhesive is dried, I start at the bottom of the beak and I work my way up. Now notice that I do not glue it completely together at the top. These flaps will be adhered to the backside of part B. Part B is going to be traced and cut out of some 4mm foam. Contact cement is going to be used to glue the dart together at the top. After the seam has been firmly pressed together, it can then be glued onto the beak. And you can see how these pieces being glued together give the mask its profile. Part C is going to make up the outside edge of this mask, and it's also going to be traced and cut out of some 4mm foam. My recommendation would be to glue the top sections first. That way, once they're glued into place, you can adjust where they're going to be attached to the backside of part A. And notice that I curve the foam while it's being glued into place to better fit my face. Part D is going to make up the lower section of the beak, and this is going to be traced and cut out of some 4mm foam. Now, I've marked on the template approximately where it's going to attach to the backside of part A, but you of course could change this to better fit you. The same thing goes with part E, which is going to make up the underside of the mask. This will be traced and cut out of some 6mm foam. Now, if you're worried about the mask being too hot or you'd like to be more comfortable, you could just leave this piece off or trim it shorter. Part F is going to make up the outside edge of the mask, and this is going to be traced and cut out of some 6mm foam. I go ahead and mark with a pencil approximately where it's going to go before I glue it into place. Now, if you're customizing your mask, you of course could change any of these pieces to better fit your style. The eye is going to be multi-layered, and the base of that is going to be part G, which is going to be traced and cut out of some 4mm foam. Part H is going to go on top of this piece, and it's also going to be traced and cut out of 4mm foam. But before I glue it down, I decided that I wanted to use some PVC pipe to give me some nice detailed rings. So I was able to cut the pipe down to about 1/4 inch, and then I sanded the exposed edges smooth. These PVC rings could then be super glued onto part H. Now notice that I did not cut away the eye holes for these yet. You of course could do that ahead of time depending on how you want to assemble yours. But for my build, I'm going to be using a Forstner bit to drill completely through parts G and H. You could also create the holes like this using your rotary tool. For the lenses on this mask, I'm going to be cutting down some Hobart Face Replacement Shield shade number 3. On my previous Plague Doctor mask, I cut down sunglasses, so you could do that as well. Here's where I start to customize mine a little bit. I'm going to go with this layered detail on the top of the beak. So parts I, J, and K are going to be traced and cut out of some 4mm foam. Now, of course, this is a detail that I'm adding to my mask, but it's not saying that you necessarily have to do this for yours. You could easily just do some stitching across the top of the beak as well. Now, the bottom of part K has more material than necessary, so that way I was able to glue it down and just trim away the excess. So I did a rough cut with the scissors to remove the excess foam and then sanded it smooth with my rotary tool. A little bit of heat is added to reseal all the foam edges, and here you can see that the mask is really starting to come together. I'd like to go with a layered trim look on this mask, so part L is going to be traced and cut out of some 2mm foam. And because I'm not going to be able to get the rotary tool in there later, I go ahead and sand the inside edge now. I use some Bob Smith super glue to adhere this into place, and just like some of the other parts, I have more material here at the top and the bottom than necessary. So once I have the outside edge glued down, I can trim away the top and the bottom until they fit flush. Part M is going to be a 2mm trim piece that's going to attach to part C. This is also going to be cut out with a hobby knife and sanded with a rotary tool before being glued into place. And again, I'm trimming away excess materials until they fit flush. Now on my mask, I'm going for a metal and leather combination look, which is why I don't have trim pieces like these for parts F and D, but you could easily make them for yours. Part N is also going to be traced and cut out of some 2mm foam. This trim piece is going to be attached to the top of part B. To cover up the central seam on the beak, I cut some really thin strips of foam. This was glued down and then wrapped under. I want the front part of this beak to look like metal. These thin strips of foam were also glued around the outside edges of parts D and F. Small strips are also added to the outside edge of part B as well. I'm going to use a strip to also cover the central seam on part B, but because I'm doing this late in the game, I need to trim back part of part I so that it can go underneath. I got out my compass so that I could use it to create a central stitch line on all of the trim pieces. Then I could follow the pencil lines with a leather stitch marker. This evenly spaces the stitch points out so I don't have to guess. Then using a metal pick, I could poke through the multiple layers of foam. This is going to make it a lot easier to stitch. And of course, when it comes to these types of details, you could add as many or as few as you want. You could also vary how rough the stitches are placed depending on if you're going for a more weathered look. For the stitching process, I'm going to be using some waxed cotton cord and a leather needle. Because these stitches aren't really functional, I'm not going to saddle stitch it. You of course could, this is just the look I wanted to go for. Now this is a time-consuming process, but once painted, this will definitely be worth it. And this is something you could do after the mask was painted. I didn't because I wasn't sure what color I wanted the thread until the end. To simulate some fake brass rivets, I'm going to be using a 1/4 inch hole punch on some 2mm foam. And what I'm doing here is just looking at the mask and then gluing these into place of where I believe functional rivets would be. This is also where you can have a lot of fun though. If you wanted the mask to look like it was metal, you could add a ton of details at this stage of the project. One of the things I really like about these types of handmade details is that it starts to give the mask a very believable look. Once textures and paint are added, you would never know that this mask was made out of foam. And at this time I decided to add a few more small strips to the metal beak as well. I'm going to be gluing elastic straps to the back of the mask, but another thing to think about is where the rivets would be to attach those. I'm going to be going with a leather look for the upper portion of the mask, and to give it that type of texture, I'm going to be doing the tinfoil technique, which consists of heating up the foam and then pressing the tinfoil in it to emboss the surface. And remember when heating foam to always wear your respirator. After the textures have been added, I can then coat the surface with 3 light coats of Plasti Dip. This is going to seal the foam and get it ready for some red oxide primer. The primer is just dusted on to act as a base layer for the additional hand-painted acrylics. Liquitex Heavy Body Mars Black and a little bit of burnt sienna are going to be mixed together and then painted onto the surface using a lot of water and a 1-inch mop brush. Any additional wash can be taken away with a damp paper towel. And then a hairdryer can be used to speed up the dry time. A mixture of burnt sienna and raw sienna are going to be dry brushed onto the surface using that same mop brush. but adding absolutely no water because I just want it to hit the high points. This is going to make all of those tinfoil details really pop. For the metal sections on the mask, I start by adding a base layer of Golden Brand's iridescent bronze. Now I do plan on adding a brass. What this does is it just adds some darker metallics underneath of it. So by adding these darker metallics first and then introducing some lighter metallics on top, it allows that lighter metallic to look a lot richer. So this darker metallic is going to be painted on the beak, the base of the jaws, around the eyes, and all of the rivets. For my brass, I'm going to be using a gold leaf gilding paint by Craftsmart. Now this type of paint is extremely opaque. Do not get it anywhere you don't want because you're going to have to repaint over those areas. But I will say that it's extremely metallic and extremely reflective. It's actually so metallic that I went back with some of that burnt sienna and raw sienna wash and I put that on top of the gold. This helped knock it back a little bit, and I could still use a damp paper towel to take some of the wash away. And I kind of liked where that brown was going, helping to age the gold, but it wasn't quite enough. So I decided to get out some of my Dirty Down rust. Now Dirty Down, if you've never used it, is a special type of paint. It has a chemical in it that once painted on creates a reaction and gives it an oxidation look. So it's really great to use for detailed areas, but the other thing that's really nice about it is it is water soluble. So what I like to do is paint it on with one brush and let it dry. Then I'll go in with a brush that's a little damp and it'll allow me to push the pigments around and feather them out. This way it gives me a lot more control for the level of corrosion that I'd like on the mask. So the rust was painted where I envisioned there'd be a lot of buildup of dirt and grime around rivets and in recessed areas. At this point of the build, it was time to address the threads, and I thought that light threads might be a little too distracting. So I just decided to use some Liquitex Heavy Body March Black and a detail brush and paint each one of the threads black. This way it allowed the gold on the beak and the rivets to be more of the focal point. To attach the mask, I'm going to start by making the top strap out of some 1.5 inch elastic. The top strap is cut to approximately 13.5 inches. Using some hot glue, a loop was glued on one end of this. After marking placement with a pencil, I could then use a hobby knife to slightly cut into the foam. This is going to help the super glue and the hot glue attach to the elastic a little bit better. 3/4 inch tri-glides are going to be used for the side straps. This will give it more of a professional look and make it fully adjustable. The 3/4 inch elastic is cut to approximately 10.5 inches. One edge of the tri-glide could then be hot glued to the end of each strap. The elastic from the other end of one strap is then fed through the tri-glide. Then this process can be repeated for the opposite side. The elastic can then move freely between the two glides, and that's how you adjust it for your head. The side straps can be fed through the top loop before being attached to the sides. And remember when I put the fake rivets on earlier to make it look like that's how they're attached. But once again, I'm going to use a mixture of super glue and hot glue on the elastic. I've used this double adhesive method for a long time and it holds up really well. Some 1 inch upholstery foam is going to be cut into small blocks. These are going to be glued on top of the elastic ends just to make the mask a little more comfortable, but it's not a necessity. With the mask pretty much complete, I can now attach my lenses. Small dots of super glue are going to be placed along the inside edge of the eyepiece. Then my lens is just snug enough that it can be pressed into place. Once I'm satisfied that the glue is set up, I can then peel away the protective layer. And with that, I've got another completed Plague Doctor mask. so you all can see what it takes to put together my Plague Doctor mask version 2.0. And again, if you want to make your own, I have free PDF files available over on my website. Links are down in the description. And if you are making one, be sure to tag me at SKSProps on Twitter and Instagram because I would love to see your creations. Until next time, build your best with the best. HD Foam.